So AI taking over jobs, right? I bet that's got some people a little on edge, and understandably so. We're diving into some research today that tackles that very fear head on, but it goes beyond the usual, robots are coming for us narrative.
What I found fascinating is this paper takes aim at the solution everyone seems to jump to. Universal Basic Income, UBI.
The classic, just give everyone a paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. But, and here's where things get interesting. This paper argues that UBI could actually be like a temporary fix at best, that it might even end up limiting our choices down the line. Think about it. If your only option is to accept a handout, are you really free to go after what you want in life?
That's a really interesting way to put it. It's not just about having a safety net, it's about having the freedom to choose your own path. So if UBI isn't the answer here, what does this paper propose instead?
Well, they really push for something called responsible innovation, RI for short.
Okay, responsible innovation. Let's break that down a bit. What does that actually mean?
So imagine this. We start incorporating societal values into the development of AI from the get-go. We're not just slapping on some ethical guidelines after the fact. These values are like built into the very core of the technology.
So instead of saying, whoops, how do we clean up this AI mess? It's more like, how do we make sure AI is a force for good right from the start?
You got it.
Yeah.
And that brings up some pretty important questions, right? Like, whose values are we talking about here? How do we even translate those values into actual tangible features in the technology itself?
So we're not just talking about, like, cutting checks here. What does it really mean to create a fair system, a just world when AI is involved? What are some other ways to approach this whole thing?
This paper lays out two really interesting alternatives to how we usually think about justice. The first one they call spheres of justice. It's an idea from a philosopher, Michael Walzer.
Okay, spheres of justice. What's the main idea behind that?
So what Walzer says is different parts of life, they have their own values, their own goals, like how we think about fairness in healthcare.
Huh.
Totally different from how we see it in, say, the stock market.
Yeah, that makes sense. Healthcare, it's all about well-being. The market, it's more about profit, competition, that kind of thing.
Right. And Walter's point is AI shouldn't use the same idea of justice for every single situation, every sphere. We need to consider what's important in each area and make sure AI fits those values.
So thinking about your interests, like healthcare, can you give me a real-world example of how this would actually work?
Sure. Let's say you've got robots in hospitals, right? Purely from a getting things done perspective. You might think, let's automate everything, like collecting patient samples.
Yeah, seems more efficient, right?
Totally. But thinking that way misses something really important about how patients experience healthcare. Having a kind, compassionate nurse collect that sample, even if it's simple, it can make a huge difference to a patient's dignity, their well-being.
It's not just about getting the task done, it's about the human element, the empathy.
Absolutely. And that's what spheres of justice makes us think about.
Mm.
How do we make sure AI respects those unique values instead of just going for efficiency or, the bottom line?
Really important point. Now, you said there were two alternative approaches. What's the other one?
Right. So the second one is called the capability approach. An economist, Amartya Sen, came up with this one.
Capability approach. Okay, break that down for me. What's the main idea there?
Sen says, let's shift the focus from just having stuff to what people can actually do with what they've got, the resources, the opportunities. It's not just about having money. It's about having the freedom to actually use that money to live a good life, a life you want.
So it's less about how much is in your bank account, more about being able to make your own choices, right? I like where this is going. But what's the connection to AI specifically?
Sen would say AI should be designed to help us do more, not less, to open up possibilities, not make us obsolete. It's about empowerment, using AI to create a world where everyone can reach their full potential.
Sounds great in theory, but can you give me a concrete example? How could AI actually expand our capabilities in a practical way?
Imagine a world where anyone could contribute to, like, groundbreaking scientific discoveries from their own home, no matter their background. That's the potential of AI-powered citizen science.
Citizen science. Now that sounds interesting. How would that work?
So AI could be used to connect everyday people with scientists, researchers who are working on these complex problems. It can provide the tools, the guidance, so people can contribute meaningful data, real insights.
So it's not AI replacing scientists. It's more like AI empowering more people to actually be a part of scientific discovery. That's really cool.
Exactly. It highlights how AI can be this force for expanding what we're capable of, creating opportunities that didn't exist before.
Citizen science, that's a really cool concept. And it kind of fits with this whole idea of AI helping us do things we couldn't do before, right? But this whole conversation, it kind of depends on AI being this neutral thing, right? Like it's just this tool and we get to decide how to use it. Is that really how it works, though?
You're hitting on a really crucial point there, and the paper actually pushes back on this idea of AI being totally autonomous, totally neutral.
So it's not like gonna wake up one day and decide to take over the world or something.
Let's hope not. But seriously, the paper really emphasizes how even the smartest AI out there, it still relies heavily on us, on human intelligence.
So it's not really AI replacing human intelligence then. It's more like, what, amplifying it?
Exactly. Think about it. AI needs us to give it data, to design its algorithms, to make sense of the results it spits out. And of course, we create the whole social system that lets it function in the first place. It's more of a partnership than, one replacing the other.
Okay, I see. So if AI depends so much on us, on our input, our creativity, what does that mean for, well, getting paid?
And that's where this paper gets really fascinating. They argue that we need to start seeing human capabilities, things like creativity, knowledge, critical thinking, as a kind of capital,
Yeah.
just as valuable as, financial capital.
Mental capital, huh? So like our brains are the real gold mine in the age of AI.
In a way, yeah. And the paper throws out some really radical ideas about how we could reward this mental capital. What if platforms like Facebook, for example, had to actually pay users for their data? After all, that data is what makes their algorithms work, what brings in the profits.
It's like that saying, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Except maybe it's time we did get paid, right?
Yeah, right. And it goes even further. Imagine systems of, like, social credit, where you're recognized and rewarded for contributions that go beyond traditional work. Volunteering, caregiving, artistic creation, things that are vital to a healthy society, but often undervalued in a purely economic sense.
So we're not just measuring success by your paycheck, but by how you're making a positive difference in the world. That's a future I could get behind. But let's be real, those are some pretty big changes.
Absolutely. And the paper acknowledges that. There are definitely ethical questions, logistical hurdles to figure out. But here's what I think is the most interesting proposal in the whole thing. What if we took a good chunk of the wealth generated by AI and poured it into education, the arts, activities that help people grow?
Investing in our own mental capital on a massive scale. Now, that's a bold idea.
It really is. Imagine a world where lifelong learning isn't a luxury, it's a right. Everyone has the chance to explore their talents, their passions, no matter their background. AI wouldn't just be about efficiency then. It would be about making us more human.
That's a pretty inspiring thought to wrap things up on. So, as you're out there navigating this world that's more and more shaped by AI, here's a question for you. Is it expanding what you're capable of, or is it limiting you? Is it respecting the values you see in different parts of your life, or is it blurring the lines in ways that feel, well, maybe not so great? We're still figuring out this whole AI thing, and the choices we make today, those are the choices that'll shape what the future looks like.